The test strip trembled in Indira's hands, the two pink lines impossibly stark against the white background. She stared at them until they blurred, willing them to disappear, to transform into a single negative line that would make sense in her wolfless existence. But they remained. Pregnant. The word echoed through her mind like a death knell, each repetition louder than the last. Her legs gave out, and she sank onto the cold bathroom floor of her tiny cabin at the edge of Silver Creek Pack territory. The tiles pressed ice through her thin nightgown, grounding her in a reality she couldn't comprehend. It was impossible. Completely, utterly impossible. Werewolves couldn't conceive without the mate bond, the sacred connection between two wolves that intertwined souls and bodies. And Indira had no wolf. She'd never had one. At 24 years old, she'd long since accepted that she was an anomaly, a broken thing living on the fringes of pack society. The other wolves tolerated her presence because her mother had been a respected healer before her death, but Indira knew the truth in their sidelong glances and whispered conversations. She was less than, incomplete. And now she was pregnant. Her hand moved to her still flat stomach, fingers splaying across the fabric of her gown. Life grew inside her. Impossible, miraculous, terrifying life. She tried to remember the last time she'd been with anyone, but her mind came up empty. There had been no one. She'd resigned herself to a solitary existence years ago, knowing no wolf would want a mate without a beast of their own. A knock at her door shattered the silence. Sharp, authoritative, demanding. Indira Thorne, open this door immediately. Elder Kane's voice sent ice flooding through her veins. She shoved the pregnancy test into her pocket and stumbled to her feet, smoothing her gown with shaking hands. When she opened the door, 3 pack elders stood on her threshold, their expressions carved from stone. The Alpha has sensed a disturbance in the pack bonds, Elder Kane said, his silver beard bristling with disapproval. An impossibility has occurred within our territory. Behind him, Elder Mira's eyes dropped to Indira's stomach with an accuracy that made her blood freeze. You reek of it, girl. Life magic where there should be none. I don't understand what's happening, Indira whispered, backing into her cabin as the elders advanced. I didn't do anything wrong. I don't know how. How doesn't matter, Elder Kane cut her off. What matters is that you carry a child without a mate bond, without a wolf. It's an abomination against pack law and nature itself. The third elder, old Silas, pulled a leather-bound tome from beneath his cloak. The pages crackled as he opened it, revealing script so ancient the ink had faded to brown. His gnarled finger traced the words as he read aloud. When the blood moon wanes and waxes thrice, a woman without beast shall bear the child of prophecy. From her womb shall come the one who unites what has been sundered, who bridges the divide between strength and weakness, wolf and man. Silas's eyes lifted to pin her with an intensity that made her stumble backward. 6 months ago, we witnessed the third blood moon of the century. Indira's mind reeled. 6 months ago. She remembered that night, remembered the dreams that had felt more real than waking, dreams of silver eyes and rough hands, of pleasure that transcended the physical, of a voice that promised her she was worthy, wanted, his. She'd woken the next morning aching and confused, dismissing it as wishful fantasy born from loneliness. But dreams didn't create life. The prophecy speaks of unity, Elder Mira said, her voice sharp as flint. But prophecies are dangerous things. They speak of change, of the old order falling. Alpha Thorn has decreed that this pregnancy threatens pack stability. No. The word ripped from Indira's throat. Her hand flew to her stomach, protective and fierce. No, you can't. This is a life. An innocent. An abomination, Elder Kane corrected coldly. The Alpha has ordered its termination and your punishment for whatever dark magic you've employed to create it. Terror flooded through her, primal and absolute. Indira looked from one implacable face to another, seeing no mercy, no compassion, only fear of what she represented, what grew inside her. "I need time," she said desperately. "Please, just let me." "The Alpha's warriors arrive at moonrise," Silas said, and despite his harsh words, something flickered in his ancient eyes. Regret, perhaps, or pity. "If you value your life and that of your child, you'll be gone by then." They left her standing in the doorway of her cabin, the prophetic words still echoing in the small space. Moonrise was 2 hours away. 2 hours to pack a life, to run from the only home she'd ever known, to flee into territories where a wolfless woman alone would be prey for rogues and predators. But her hand remained on her stomach, and beneath her palm she could have sworn she felt a flutter, impossible at such an early stage, yet undeniable. "I'll protect you," she whispered to the life growing inside her. "Whatever it takes, I promise." The forest consumed her in darkness and sound. Indira ran until her lungs burned and her legs screamed, her small pack bouncing against her spine with each desperate stride. Behind her, howls split the night. Alpha Thorn's warriors, hunting. They'd discovered her flight earlier than Silas had promised. Or perhaps there had been no promise at all, just the illusion of mercy. Branches clawed at her clothes and face, drawing blood that marked her trail as clearly as breadcrumbs. She pressed deeper into the wild lands between pack territories, where even wolves with full strength hesitated to travel. Her humanity, her weakness, might be her only advantage here. The warriors would have to shift back to human form to follow her through the dense undergrowth, slowing them down. But not by much. There! A voice crashed through the trees behind her. Too close. "I see her!" Indira pushed harder, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "The child," she thought desperately. "I have to protect the child." The words became a mantra, driving her forward when exhaustion threatened to drag her down. The forest changed around her. The trees grew taller, older, their trunks thick as houses and their branches blocking out even the moonlight. The air grew colder, sharper, carrying a scent that made something in her chest, where her wolf should have been, contract with instinctive recognition. Power. Ancient, absolute power that saturated the very ground beneath her feet. She'd reached the Northern Kingdom's border, Alpha King Steel's territory. Every wolf in the realm knew his name, knew his reputation. Ruthless, they said. Merciless to his enemies. He'd united the northern packs through a combination of strategic brilliance and savage strength, and now he ruled over the largest territory in the werewolf world. Wolves who entered his lands without permission rarely left them. But the howls behind her were growing closer, and Indira had no choice left. She crossed the invisible line that marked Steel's border and felt it immediately. A pulse of power that washed over her like a wave, assessing, measuring. Her vision blurred. She'd been running for hours, her body pushed beyond its limits, and the adrenaline that had kept her moving finally abandoned her. The ground rushed up to meet her. "Please," she whispered as darkness closed in. "Please, someone protect my baby." The earth was cold against her cheek, and the howls behind her transformed into shouts of alarm. Silver Creek's warriors had reached the border but didn't cross. Through the haze of consciousness, Indira heard their voices. "She's in Steel's territory now. We have to go back. If he finds us here, let him have the abomination. She's dead anyway." Their footsteps retreated, leaving her alone in the darkness. Alone with the cold and the fear, and the tiny life inside her that deserved so much more than a wolfless mother dying in the dirt. A new sound reached her. Footsteps, but different. Measured, confident, approaching without hesitation. The power she'd felt at the border intensified, until it pressed against her like a physical weight. Then hands touched her, impossibly warm, turning her gently onto her back. Indira forced her eyes open and found herself staring up at the most striking face she'd ever seen. Silver eyes, the same silver eyes from her impossible dreams 6 months ago, stared down at her with an intensity that stole what little breath she had left. Sharp features carved from bronze skin, black hair falling across a forehead marked with faint scars that spoke of countless battles. Broad shoulders blocked out the sky, and the sheer presence of him made the air feel thick and electric. "You," she breathed, not understanding how or why, but knowing with absolute certainty. "I dreamed you." Something flickered in those silver eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or surprise. His hand moved to her stomach, pressing gently against the place where her child grew, and his entire body went rigid. "Impossible," he murmured, his voice deep as distant thunder. Then louder, with absolute authority. "Marcus! Get the healers to my chambers immediately!" Other figures appeared around them, warriors in dark armor, their eyes glowing in the darkness with wolf light. But Indira couldn't look away from the man above her, from the way his hand remained protective on her stomach. "How?" he demanded, his eyes boring into hers. "How are you carrying my child?" "I don't—" Indira's voice cracked. "I don't know what you mean. I've never met you before tonight. I don't even know who you are. I am Steel, Alpha King of the Northern Kingdoms." His other hand moved to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone with unexpected gentleness. "And you carry my heir. I can feel my bloodline in that child as clearly as I feel my own heartbeat." "That's impossible," she whispered, echoing his earlier word. "I'm wolfless. I can't have a mate bond. I can't." "Yet you ran from your pack, crossed into the most dangerous territory in the realm, and collapsed at my feet, carrying a child that resonates with my very soul." Steele's silver eyes softened slightly, though his jaw remained hard as granite. "The how doesn't matter right now. What matters is that you're under my protection now, both of you." He lifted her into his arms as though she weighed nothing, cradling her against his chest. The warmth of him seeped into her chilled skin, and despite every rational thought screaming that she should be terrified, Indira felt her body relax. "I don't understand any of this," she said against his shoulder, exhaustion finally claiming her. "You will." Steele's voice rumbled through his chest, vibrating against her cheek. "But first, you need rest and healing. Then we'll discuss the impossible thing that's brought you to me." The fortress rose before them like something from a nightmare or a dream. All black stone and soaring towers, lit by torches that burned with blue flame. Warriors lined the walls, their eyes tracking their alpha's approach with undisguised shock. Steele carried her through gates that opened at his mere presence, into courtyards where pack members stopped and stared. "My lord," a man with kind brown eyes and warrior's build approached, concern etched into his features. "The healers are waiting in your chambers as you ordered, but perhaps it would be more appropriate to—" "She stays where I can protect her," Steele interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. "Indira carries something precious, Marcus, something that changes everything." Marcus's eyes widened. "My lord, are you saying—" "I'm saying exactly what you think I'm saying." Steele's arms tightened around her. "And when she's recovered, I'll be making a formal declaration before the pack." They climbed stairs that seemed endless, passing through halls decorated with weapons and tapestries depicting battles long past. Finally, Steele shouldered through double doors into a chamber that could have contained her entire cabin. A massive bed dominated the space, and beside it, two women in healers' robes waited with supplies. Steele laid her on the bed with infinite care, arranging pillows beneath her head. "Examine her," he ordered the healers, "but gently. The child's safety is paramount." "Of course, my lord," the older healer said, approaching with a warm smile. "I'm Mora, dear. I'm going to check you and your baby, make sure you're both healthy. Is that all right?" Indira nodded, too overwhelmed to do more. Mora's hands glowed with soft golden light as she examined her, the healing magic warm and soothing against Indira's battered body. "Remarkable," Mora breathed after a long moment. "The child is healthy, strong, and the mother—" She looked up at Steele with something like awe. The bond is already forming, my lord. I've never seen anything like it. She has no wolf, yet the mate bond weaves itself around her soul. Mate bond? Indira struggled to sit up, but Steele's hand on her shoulder kept her in place. No, that's not possible. I told you, I don't have a wolf. I can't. 6 months ago, Steele interrupted, his silver eyes intense as they held hers. During the third blood moon, did you dream? The question hit her like a physical blow. Heat flooded her cheeks as memories surfaced. The dream that had felt like more than a dream. The phantom touch that had left her gasping. The voice promising her belonging. Yes, she admitted. But it was just a dream. A fantasy. I was alone in my cabin. Nothing happened. Everything happened. Steele sat on the edge of the bed, his presence overwhelming. During the blood moon ceremony, I fell into a prophetic trance. My spirit left my body and traveled across the realm, drawn to my destined mate. To you. His hand covered hers where it rested on her stomach. I knew when I woke that I'd found her, created life with her through the old magic. But I couldn't sense where you were, couldn't track you. I've been searching for 6 months. Tears burned in Indira's eyes. This doesn't make sense. Why would the fates bind a powerful alpha king to a broken wolfless woman? I'm nothing. I have nothing to offer you or a child. You're carrying my heir. Steele's thumb brushed across her knuckles. That makes you everything. But more than that. He paused, something vulnerable flickering across his face. In that dream, in that joining of souls, I felt your strength. The courage it takes to survive in a world that tells you you're less than. The hope you've maintained despite every rejection. You're not broken, Indira. You're extraordinary. My pack tried to kill me, she whispered. When they found out about the pregnancy, they called it an abomination. Called for my death and the child's. Rage transformed Steele's features, his eyes blazing silver fire. Who ordered it? Alpha Thorn. And the elders. She swallowed hard. They found a prophecy that spoke of a wolfless woman bearing a child who would unite all packs. They saw it as a threat. And they'll answer for it. Steele's voice was cold as winter steel. But first, you need to recover. Tomorrow, I'll present you to my pack and make my claim official. Wait! Panic fluttered in Indira's chest. You can't just claim me. I don't know you. This is all happening too fast. I need time to... We don't have time. Steele's hand moved to cup her cheek, his touch achingly gentle despite the hardness in his voice. When your pack realizes you're here, they'll appeal to the High Council. They'll claim you broke pack law, try to force your return. The only way I can protect you absolutely is if you're mine before witnesses. My mate, under my protection, subject to my authority alone. So I trade one alpha's control for another's? Bitterness crept into her voice. Go from being property of Silver Creek to property of the Northern Kingdom? No. Steele leaned closer, his silver eyes boring into hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. You become my equal, my mate, my queen, the mother of my heir, and the future of my bloodline. I'm not asking you to submit, Indira. I'm offering you power, protection, a place where you'll never be called broken or less than again. Because of the child, she said quietly. Because I'm carrying what you claim is your heir. Because you're mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened her, but instead it sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. The child is proof of our bond, but even without it, I would claim you. I would protect you. From the moment I woke from that blood moon dream, you've been the only thing I've searched for. The healers had quietly retreated, leaving them alone in the vast chamber. Outside the windows, dawn began to paint the sky in shades of rose and gold. Indira looked at the man before her, this powerful, feared alpha king who claimed she belonged to him, who promised protection and power and a place to belong. Every rational part of her screamed that this was madness, that she was trading one impossible situation for another. But her hand remained on her stomach, feeling the life growing there, and she knew she had no real choice. Alone and wolfless, she and her child would die. With steel. One condition, she said, meeting his silver gaze. I need the truth. Always. No matter how difficult or painful. If we're bound together, if you expect me to be your mate and queen, I won't be kept ignorant or treated like property. Something like respect flickered in Steele's eyes. Agreed. And my condition? You trust me to protect you and our child, even when you don't understand my methods. The threats we'll face require absolute unity. How can I trust you when I barely know you? Because you already do. Steele's hand pressed over hers on her stomach. Here, where it matters. Your soul knows mine, Indira. Everything else is just our minds catching up. He was right, and that terrified her more than anything else. Because despite the impossibility of it all, despite her fear and confusion, some deep part of her recognized him, wanted him, believed him. Tomorrow, she whispered, surrendering to the inevitable. You can make your claim, but tonight, I need rest. Time to process all of this. Steele nodded, rising from the bed. Sleep. Mora will check on you through the night, and I'll have food sent up when you wake. Tomorrow changes everything. He moved toward the door, but Indira's voice stopped him. Steele? What happens if they don't accept me? Your pack, I mean. What if they see me the same way Silver Creek did? He turned back, and the fierce certainty in his eyes made her breath catch. Then they'll learn that anyone who threatens what's mine faces consequences they won't survive. Indira woke to sunlight streaming through windows taller than any tree in Silver Creek territory. For a disoriented moment, she forgot where she was, forgot the flight through the forest, the impossible Alpha King, the child growing in her womb that shouldn't exist. Then memory crashed back, and her hand flew to her stomach, finding the slight curve still there, still real. A soft knock preceded the door opening. Mora, the healer from last night, entered with a tray of food that made Indira's stomach growl despite her anxiety. Good morning, dear, Mora said warmly, setting the tray on a table near the bed. How are you feeling? Any pain? Cramping? No, I feel... Indira paused, taking mental inventory of her body. Better than I have in weeks, actually. The healing I gave you last night should hold. The baby is strong, remarkably so. Mora's eyes crinkled with a smile that held secrets. In all my years as a healer, I've never seen anything quite like this bond forming between you and our Alpha King. Heat flooded Indira's cheeks. I still don't understand how it's possible. I don't have a wolf. The mate bond requires souls that recognize each other, a new voice interrupted. A woman swept into the room, tall and regal with Steele's same striking silver eyes and sharp features softened by femininity. Black hair cascaded down her back in an intricate braid, and she moved with the fluid grace of someone completely comfortable with her power. And apparently, your soul knew my brothers quite intimately 6 months ago. Ravenna, Mora said with a hint of warning in her tone. Be gentle. She's been through an ordeal. I'm simply stating facts. Ravenna approached the bed, studying Indira with an intensity that made her want to shrink into the pillows. My brother has declared before the entire pack that you carry his heir. Do you understand what that means? The responsibility, the scrutiny, the danger you've brought to our doorstep? I didn't ask for any of this, Indira said, finding her voice despite her intimidation. I didn't ask to be pregnant, to be hunted by my own pack, or to collapse at your brother's feet. And yet here you are. Ravenna's expression remained unreadable. Steele has called a formal gathering for tonight. He'll present you to the pack and make his claim official. I suggest you eat, rest, and prepare yourself. Not everyone will welcome a wolfless woman as their future queen. She left as abruptly as she'd arrived, leaving a chill in her wake. Mora sighed and patted Indira's hand. Don't mind Ravenna. She's protective of Steel and the pack. But she'll come around once she sees how genuine the bond is. Indira wasn't so sure, but she accepted the food Mora offered and discovered she was ravenous. As she ate, her mind churned with questions and fears. Tonight, she'd stand before Steele's pack and be claimed as his mate. The thought should terrify her. It did terrify her. But beneath the fear lurked something else. Something warm and expectant that had no business existing in her chaotic life. The door opened again, and this time Steele himself entered. He'd changed from last night's battle-worn clothing into dark pants and a simple shirt that did nothing to diminish his commanding presence. His silver eyes found hers immediately, and the connection that sparked between them made her breath catch. "How are you feeling?" His voice was softer than it had been last night. Gentler. Confused. Overwhelmed. Pregnant. The last word came out with a slightly hysterical laugh. "Take your pick." Steele's mouth quirked in something that might have been a smile. "All understandable. I thought you might like to see more of the fortress today, learn about your new home. Is that what this is? My home?" Indira set down her fork, meeting his gaze. "Or am I just a guest until you decide what to do with the inconvenient wolfless woman carrying your impossible child?" "You're mine." Steele crossed the room in 3 strides, sitting on the edge of the bed as he had last night. "And what's mine, I protect. What's mine, I treasure. You're not an inconvenience, Indira. You're a gift I'd stopped believing I'd receive." The sincerity in his voice made her throat tight. "You don't even know me. Then let me learn." He extended his hand, palm up, an offering rather than a demand. "Spend the day with me. Let me show you the fortress, introduce you to the people who will serve and protect you. Let me prove that I meant what I said last night. You're my equal here, not my prisoner." Indira looked at his hand, at the calluses that spoke of weapon work and battle, at the strength that could crush but offered only gentleness. Every instinct screamed at her to be cautious, to protect herself, but her heart, or perhaps something deeper, something that recognized him in ways she couldn't explain, urged her to trust. She placed her hand in his. The fortress was a marvel of ancient architecture and modern comfort. Steele led her through halls lined with tapestries depicting battles and ceremonies centuries old. Pack members they passed stopped and stared, some with curiosity, others with barely concealed hostility. But none dared speak against her with Steele's hand firmly clasping hers. "The fortress has stood for 800 years, Steele explained as they walked. Each Alpha King has added to it, expanded it. My contribution has been the library." He pushed open massive oak doors, and Indira gasped. Books lined walls that stretched 3 stories high, accessible by spiral staircases and walkways. Sunlight poured through skylights, illuminating reading nooks and study tables. The scent of leather and paper and old magic permeated the air. "It's beautiful," she breathed, unconsciously stepping further into the space. "I've never seen so many books." "You can read?" Steele asked, and there was no judgment in the question, just curiosity. "My mother taught me before she died. She said knowledge was the only power a wolfless girl could claim." Indira ran her fingers along a shelf, feeling the texture of ancient spines. "The pack thought it was a waste teaching me, but she insisted." "Your mother sounds like she was wise." Steele moved beside her, pulling down a volume bound in midnight blue leather. "This is the history of the Northern Kingdoms. And here," he gestured to another section, "are texts on healing, magic, and bloodline abilities. Everything in this library is yours to explore." Indira looked up at him, at the way sunlight caught in his dark hair and made his silver eyes almost luminescent. "Why are you being so kind to me?" "Because you're carrying my child." Because the bond between us is real, even if you can't feel it the way I can yet. Because he paused, something vulnerable flickering across his features. Because I know what it's like to be judged for circumstances beyond your control. You're an alpha king, Indira said softly. Everyone respects you, fears you. How could you possibly understand? Steele replaced the book on its shelf and turned to face her fully. My father died when I was 16. Too young to take the throne. Too dangerous to leave without an alpha. The pack elders wanted to install a regent, keep me powerless until I came of age. But the bloodline curse meant I might not live that long. Every alpha king before me died young, without heirs, without mates. I had to fight for every scrap of authority, prove myself in challenge after challenge, knowing that any day might be my last. He reached out, tucking a strand of her dark hair behind her ear. The touch sent warmth cascading through her. I know what it's like to be seen as less than, to have others dismiss your worth based on circumstances you can't control. So yes, Indira, I understand more than you might think. She wanted to say something, but words failed her. Instead, she simply leaned into his touch, letting herself absorb the comfort he offered. For long moments, they stood together in the library's quiet, the mate bond Steele claimed existed humming between them like a half-heard song. The garden surprised her even more than the library. Tucked into a corner of the fortress grounds, protected by high walls that blocked the wind, life flourished in defiance of the northern climate. Roses climbed trellises, their blooms ranging from white to deepest crimson. Herbs scented the air with sage and lavender. A fountain burbled in the center, the water somehow unfrozen despite the chill. My mother's garden, Steele said quietly. She died giving birth to Ravenna. I maintain it in her memory. Indira walked to the fountain, trailing her fingers through the water. Magic pulsed beneath the surface, a warming spell to keep the garden alive through winter. It's peaceful here. I thought you might like it. You can come here whenever you need quiet. No one else uses it much. Steele sat on the fountain's edge, watching her explore. Tonight will be overwhelming. The pack gathering, the formal claiming. But know that afterward, you'll have sanctuary here. Space that's yours alone. Steele. Indira turned to face him, struggling to articulate the tangle of emotions in her chest. I'm still not sure I understand why fate would bind us. I have nothing to offer you. No wolf, no pack connections, no political advantage. Just a pregnancy I can't explain, and a past full of rejection. You have yourself. Steele stood, closing the distance between them. Your courage, your resilience, your capacity to hope, despite everything that's tried to break you. You have a soul that called to mine across impossible distances, and you have my child growing inside you, a child that will unite bloodlines and fulfill prophecies. He placed his hand over her stomach, and Indira's breath hitched at the intimacy of the gesture. Through the fabric of her borrowed dress, she could feel the warmth of his palm, the reverence in his touch. I don't know how to be what you need me to be, she whispered. Then we'll learn together. Steele's other hand cupped her cheek, tilting her face up to meet his gaze. I'm not asking you to transform into someone else, Indira. I'm asking you to be exactly who you are, and let me protect that person with everything I have. The sun painted the garden in gold and amber, and in that moment, Indira felt something shift inside her. Not the bond Steele described, she still couldn't feel that supernatural connection, but something equally powerful. The beginning of trust, the tentative unfurling of hope. Okay, she said, covering his hand with hers where it rested on her stomach. I'll try. The gathering that night was unlike anything Indira had experienced. The great hall of the fortress could hold hundreds, and it seemed every member of Steele's pack had come to witness his declaration. They lined the walls, filled the galleries above, their eyes glowing in the torchlight with wolf light that marked their beasts lurking just beneath the surface. Indira stood beside Steele on a raised dais, wearing a dress Ravenna had provided. Deep green silk that made her skin glow and, more importantly, accommodated her growing belly without making it obvious. Steele had insisted she be presented as his equal, not as a supplicant, and so she stood tall, despite her terror. "Pack of the Northern Kingdoms!" Steele's voice rang out, carrying to every corner of the massive space. "Tonight, I present to you my mate, Indira Thorne, and the heir she carries." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Indira caught fragments of whispered conversations. "Wolfless. Impossible. Prophecy child." "I know many of you have questions," Steele continued, his hand finding Indira's and clasping it firmly. "How can a wolfless woman be my mate? How can she carry my child? The answer lies in the ancient magic of the blood moon, in bonds that transcend the physical, in destiny that will not be denied." A warrior near the front stepped forward, bowing respectfully but unable to hide his skepticism. "My lord, we mean no disrespect, but without a wolf, how can she be Luna? How can she protect the pack, lead the females, uphold our traditions? She doesn't need a wolf to be strong." Steele's voice hardened. "She survived 24 years in a pack that treated her as less than. She fled across dangerous territory to protect my child. She crossed into our lands knowing my reputation, risking everything for the life growing inside her. That takes more courage than any wolf-born warrior's strength." Before anyone could respond, the great doors burst open. Marcus strode in, his expression grim, followed by guards escorting 3 figures, Alpha Thorn of Silver Creek, and 2 wolves Indira didn't recognize, but whose power marked them as important. "Alpha King Steel." Alpha Thorn's voice dripped with false courtesy. "Forgive the interruption, but I've come to reclaim stolen property." Steele's hand tightened on Indira's. She felt his rage rolling off him in waves, saw his eyes flare silver bright. "You have no property in my territory, Thorn, only your death if you don't choose your next words carefully." "The woman." Thorn pointed at Indira, his lip curling in disgust. "She fled Silver Creek to escape justice for crimes against pack law. She carries a child conceived through dark magic, an abomination that threatens all werewolf society." "She carries my child," Steele corrected, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "My heir, conceived through blood moon magic as old as our kind, and she stands under my protection as my mate." One of the strangers stepped forward, an older male with gray hair and cold eyes that assessed everything. "Alpha King Steel, I am Elder Cyrus of the High Council. We've received disturbing reports about this situation. A wolfless woman pregnant without a mate bond, ancient prophecies coming to fruition, claims of spirit bonding during the blood moon. The council requires answers. The council can—" Steele started, but Indira squeezed his hand. "No," she said softly, "just for him. Let them ask their questions. I have nothing to hide." Steele looked down at her, conflict clear in his silver eyes. But after a moment he nodded. "Very well. The council may ask its questions, but Indira answers as my mate, under my protection, and anyone who threatens her will face me personally." Elder Cyrus inclined his head. "Of course, Alpha King. We simply seek to understand this unprecedented situation. Perhaps we could speak more privately. These matters are delicate. Anything you need to ask can be asked here, before my pack." Steele's tone brooked no argument. The other stranger, a woman with sharp features and sharper eyes, spoke for the first time. "Very well. Miss Thorne, you claim to have conceived during a blood moon ceremony. Can you describe the nature of this encounter?" Heat flooded Indira's cheeks, but she lifted her chin. "I had what I believed was a dream. I was alone in my cabin at Silver Creek, but the dream felt more real than any dream I'd experienced before. I felt—" She struggled for words that wouldn't betray too much intimate detail. "I felt a presence, a connection. When I woke, I was alone, but my body told a different story. And you expect us to believe, Alpha Thorn sneered, that you were somehow impregnated by a dream? That you didn't lie with some rogue or use dark magic to create a child and are now trying to trap the most powerful alpha in the realm? Steel moved so fast Indira barely saw it. One moment he stood beside her. The next, he had Thorn by the throat, lifted off the ground, pinned against the nearest pillar. Choose your next words with extreme care, Steele said, his voice utterly calm despite the violence of his actions. Because accusing my mate of deception or dark magic is accusing me of being a fool who can't recognize his own bloodline. Steele! Elder Cyrus's voice cracked like a whip. This solves nothing. Release him. For a long moment Steele didn't move. Then with visible effort, he dropped Thorn and stepped back. But his eyes remained locked on the Silver Creek Alpha, promising violence barely restrained. The High Council will require formal testimony, the female elder said, as though the interruption hadn't occurred, and will need to examine the child once born to verify these claims of spirit bonding. No. Steele returned to Indira's side, pulling her close. My child will not be treated as a curiosity or experiment. Then you leave us little choice, Elder Cyrus said coldly. We cannot simply take your word on matters that could affect all werewolf society. If this child truly is prophesied, if spirit bonding is possible, the implications are staggering. The council must investigate. The council can go to hell, Steele said flatly. Indira and my child are under my protection. Any attempt to take them will be met with war. The elders exchanged glances. Then Cyrus spoke again, his voice heavy with warning. This is not over, Alpha King. The council will convene to discuss this matter. You will hear from us again. They left, taking Alpha Thorn with them, and silence descended over the great hall. Indira felt the weight of hundreds of eyes on her, judging, measuring, finding her wanting. Beside her, Steele radiated barely controlled fury. The gathering is concluded, he announced, his voice still rough with anger. Return to your duties. The pack dispersed slowly, unwillingly, still staring at Indira as though she might sprout horns or burst into flame. When they were finally alone except for Marcus and a few guards, Steele turned to her. I'm sorry. I should have anticipated they'd come. Should have been prepared. You can't protect me from everything, Indira said quietly, though her hands trembled as she spoke. The council, my old pack, the prophecy, these are forces bigger than both of us. Nothing is bigger than my commitment to keep you and our child safe. Steele cupped her face between his hands. Nothing. Marcus approached, his expression troubled. My lord, I've received word from our scouts. The council members aren't leaving the territory. They've made camp at the border. They're waiting for something, Steele said grimly. Or planning something. As if summoned by his words, a guard rushed into the hall, blood streaming from a wound on his shoulder. My lord, we're under attack. Rogues breached the south wall. They're heading for... He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Indira knew with terrible certainty where the attackers were heading. For her. Steele's roar shook the rafters. Marcus, get her to my chambers. Seal the doors. Nothing gets through, understood? Steele. Indira reached for him, but he was already moving, already shifting into the massive black wolf that was his beast. He disappeared into the corridor with his warriors, leaving her with Marcus and a handful of guards. My lady, please. Marcus gestured urgently toward a side door. We need to get you to safety. They ran through corridors Indira barely recognized. Marcus and the guards surrounding her in a protective formation. Behind them, she could hear sounds of battle. Snarls, screams, the clash of weapons and bodies. Terror clawed at her throat, but she kept moving, one hand protectively on her stomach. They were nearly to Steele's chambers when figures emerged from a side passage. 5 rogues, their eyes mad with bloodlust and something else, a glassy quality that spoke of being drugged or spelled. One carried a blade that gleamed with an oily sheen Indira recognized instinctively as poison. Marcus shifted immediately, his brown wolf throwing itself at the attackers. The guards followed and chaos erupted in the narrow corridor. Indira pressed herself against the wall, trying to stay out of the way. But one rogue broke through the defense line. He lunged for her, blade raised, and time seemed to slow. Indira saw the intent in his eyes, saw the arc of the poisoned blade descending toward her stomach, toward her child. Instinct overrode thought. She threw herself sideways, turning so the blade would hit her shoulder instead of her womb. Pain exploded through her as the poisoned steel sliced deep. She hit the ground hard, felt her head crack against stone. Through dimming vision, she saw Marcus's wolf tear out the rogue's throat. Saw steel appear at the corridor's end, his massive form painted with blood that wasn't his own. Then darkness claimed her, and her last thought was a desperate prayer. Please let the baby be okay. She woke to agony. Not just physical pain, though her shoulder felt like it was being burned from the inside out, but emotional torment that made her gasp. Grief, rage, fear, emotions so powerful they couldn't possibly be only hers. The bond. Mora's voice came from somewhere nearby. You're feeling what steel feels, dear. The wound awakened something between you. Indira forced her eyes open. She was back in Steele's chambers, in his massive bed. Mora sat beside her, changing bandages on her shoulder. And across the room, Steele stood at the window, his back rigid with tension, his hands clenched into fists. The baby? Indira's voice came out as a croak. Safe. Mora smiled, relief clear in her expression. You protected them. The blade missed anything vital, and I was able to counteract the poison. You'll heal, but she shouldn't have had to protect them at all. Steele's voice was low, dangerous. He turned, and Indira gasped at what she saw in his eyes. The silver had gone almost white with rage, and his control seemed to hang by a thread. She shouldn't have been in danger in my own fortress. It wasn't your fault, Indira said, trying to sit up despite Mora's protest. The attackers were hired by someone on the council. Steele crossed to the bed in 3 strides, kneeling beside it so they were eye level. We captured one alive. Before he died from whatever compulsion was laid on him, he confirmed it. The council fears the prophecy, fears what our child represents. They sent assassins to eliminate the threat. Horror washed through Indira. They'd kill an unborn child? For politics? For power? Steele's hand came up to cup her uninjured cheek. They see our child as a threat to the established order. And they're not wrong. The prophecy speaks of unity, of change, of old hierarchies falling. They'll do anything to prevent it. Through the bond Mora had mentioned, a connection Indira could now feel pulsing between them like a living thing. She felt Steele's anguish, his guilt that she'd been hurt, his rage at those who'd threatened her, his determination to protect her at any cost. I felt you, she whispered. During the fight, I felt your fear when you realized I was in danger, your rage when you saw I was hurt. It was like you were inside my head, my heart. The mate bond. Steele's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. It fully awakened when your life was threatened. Now we're truly connected, Indira. What you feel, I feel. Your pain is my pain. Your joy is my joy. We're bound in ways that transcend the physical. Tears burned in Indira's eyes. I can feel how much you care, how deeply you mean what you say about protecting us. I'm sorry I doubted you. Never apologize for protecting yourself. Steele leaned forward, pressing his forehead to hers with infinite gentleness, despite the fierce emotions raging through their bond. You've been given no reason to trust alphas. I understand that. But I swear to you, Indira, I will spend every day earning that trust. Every day proving that you're safe with me. Mora quietly excused herself, leaving them alone. Indira lifted her good arm, threading her fingers through Steele's dark hair. What happens now? She asked. If the council is willing to send assassins, what's to stop them from trying again? I've called a gathering of allied packs. Steele's silver eyes held hers. By tomorrow, 20 loyal alphas will arrive with their warriors. The council thinks they can threaten what's mine with impunity. They're about to learn otherwise. You'd start a war for me? The concept was almost impossible to grasp. I'd burn the world for you. Steele's voice was absolutely certain. You and our child are my priority. Everything else is secondary. Indira felt the truth of his words through their bond, felt the depth of his commitment. It should have been frightening. This intensity, this absolute devotion from someone she'd known for less than 2 days. But instead, it felt like safety, like belonging, like everything she'd been searching for without knowing it. I think I'm starting to understand, she said softly. Why fate bound us. We're both willing to fight impossible odds for what we believe in, both willing to sacrifice everything for those we protect. We're matched, Steele agreed. In strength, in courage, in determination. You just haven't seen it in yourself yet. He stayed with her through the night, refusing to leave her side despite the preparations happening throughout the fortress. Marcus brought reports, allied packs responding to Steele's call, defenses being reinforced, patrols doubled. But Steele simply nodded at each update and returned his attention to Indira, as though nothing else mattered as much as her presence. As dawn broke, painting the room in shades of rose and gold, Mora returned to check Indira's wound. It's healing well, the healer announced with satisfaction. The poison is purged, and with your mate bond strengthening you, recovery should be quick. Can I stand? Walk? Indira needed to move, to do something other than lie in bed while plans were made around her. Gently, Mora warned. No strain on that shoulder. Steele helped her up, his hands steadying her when she swayed. Together, they moved to the window, looking out over the fortress grounds. Below, warriors trained in the courtyard. Supplies were being organized. The entire fortress hummed with purposeful activity. They're preparing for war, Indira said quietly. They're preparing to protect their future queen and heir, Steele corrected. To them, this isn't just about politics or prophecy. It's about family. I'm not their family. I'm a stranger who appeared 2 days ago. You're their alpha's mate. That makes you pack, whether you have a wolf or not. Steele wrapped his arm around her waist, careful of her injury. Do you feel it? Through the bond? How deeply I care for you already. Indira closed her eyes, focusing on the connection pulsing between them. And yes, she felt it. Affection that had no business existing so quickly, yet was undeniable. Protectiveness that bordered on obsession. And beneath it all, something that felt dangerously like love beginning to take root. I feel it, she whispered. And Steele? I'm starting to feel the same. His sharp intake of breath told her he'd heard through the bond, what she couldn't quite say aloud yet. His arms tightened around her, and for long moments, they simply stood together, two people bound by impossible circumstances and growing emotions, facing an uncertain future. But facing it together. That evening, as promised, the Allied Alphas began arriving. Indira watched from Steele's balcony as pack after pack streamed through the gates. 20 Alphas, each with their elite warriors, each pledging support to Steele's cause. The show of strength was staggering. They're loyal to you, Indira observed as Steele joined her. They're loyal to the idea of justice, Steele corrected. Most of them have faced the Council's corruption at some point. They've been waiting for a reason to challenge the old order. We've given them that reason. A knock at the door interrupted them. Ravenna entered, her expression unreadable as she approached. The Alphas are assembled in the Great Hall, she said. They wish to meet your mate before tomorrow's council meeting. Indira felt Steele tense beside her. Is that wise? She's still recovering. I can do this, Indira said, surprising herself with her certainty. If these Alphas are risking war for us, the least I can do is face them. Ravenna's eyes flickered with something that might have been approval. The dress I selected for tonight is in the wardrobe. Green becomes you. She left, and Steele turned to Indira with concern clear in his silver eyes. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Yes, I do. Indira moved to the wardrobe, finding the dress Ravenna mentioned, deep emerald silk with gold embroidery. I have to prove I'm worth the risk they're taking, worth the faith you have in me. You're worth everything, Steele said fiercely. But Indira was already moving, already steeling herself for what came next. If she was going to be Steele's mate, his queen, she needed to be more than a victim who needed protecting. She needed to be someone these warriors could respect. The great hall was even more intimidating, filled with 20 alphas and their entourages. Power saturated the air so thickly Indira could taste it, a metallic tang that made her head spin. But she lifted her chin and walked beside Steele with her head high, refusing to show weakness despite her injured shoulder. Steele presented her to each alpha individually. Most were respectful, offering congratulations on her pregnancy and pledging protection. But a few looked at her with undisguised skepticism, clearly questioning how a wolfless woman could be worthy of the Alpha King. It was Alpha Kirin of the Eastern Mountains who spoke the question they were all thinking. With respect, Alpha King Steele, how can a woman without a wolf lead? How can she understand pack dynamics, wolf instincts, the demands of our society? She understands survival, Steele said coldly. She understands loyalty despite betrayal, hope despite despair, courage despite fear. Those qualities matter more than fangs and claws. Perhaps, Kirin said carefully, but the council will use her wolflessness against you. They'll claim she's not fit to be Luna, that your child will be tainted by her weakness. Heat flooded Indira's face, but before Steele could respond, she stepped forward. You're right, she said, her voice carrying across the hall despite its shakiness. The council will use me as a weapon against Steele. They'll claim I'm weak, unworthy, a liability, and by your society's standards, they're not wrong. I can't shift. I can't challenge threats with claws and fangs. I can't protect myself the way a wolf-born woman could. Silence descended. Steele's hand found hers, squeezing gently, but she continued. But I survived 24 years in a pack that saw me as less than. I fled across dangerous territory to protect my child. I threw myself in front of a poisoned blade to shield Steele's heir. So while I may not have a wolf, I have something just as valuable, the absolute refusal to let anyone harm what I love. If that doesn't make me fit to stand beside your Alpha King, then tell me now, and I'll leave before I cause him more trouble. The silence stretched, tension thick enough to choke on. Then Alpha Kirin did something unexpected. He knelt. Forgive my doubt, Lady Indira. You've proven yourself worthy. Your courage speaks louder than any wolf. One by one, the other alphas followed suit, kneeling before her in a show of respect that brought tears to her eyes. Even the skeptical ones bent their knees, acknowledging her worthiness. Steele's pride flooded through their bond, so powerful it made her dizzy. When the alphas rose, he addressed them with absolute authority. Tomorrow we face the council. They'll demand Indira appear before them, testify about the nature of our bond and child. And she will go, not because I'm forcing her, but because she's brave enough to face them. Steele. Indira started, but he continued. But she won't go alone. She'll have 20 alphas and their warriors surrounding her, protecting her, ensuring she receives the justice she deserves rather than the execution they've planned. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. Plans were made, strategies discussed. Through it all, Indira stood beside Steele, her hand in his, feeling the mate bond pulse between them with growing strength. Later, back in Steele's chambers, he held her carefully against his chest, mindful of her injury. You were magnificent tonight, he murmured into her hair. You won their respect in moments, made them see what I've seen from the beginning, that you're extraordinary. I was terrified, Indira admitted. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. Steele pulled back to look at her, his silver eyes soft in the candlelight. You're braver than any warrior I've known. She wanted to deflect the compliment, but through their bond, she felt his sincerity. He truly believed every word. And more, she felt his growing affection, his deepening commitment, his determination to keep her safe no matter the cost. Steel? She met his gaze, her heart pounding. Whatever happens tomorrow at the council, promise me something. Anything. Promise you won't sacrifice yourself for me. Don't trade your life for mine or the baby's. We need you. I... She swallowed hard. I need you. His eyes flared bright silver, and through the bond, she felt his emotions spike so powerfully it stole her breath. You're starting to love me. It wasn't a question, and Indira couldn't deny it. Yes, I think I am, and that terrifies me almost as much as the council. Steele kissed her then, not demanding or claiming, but tender, reverent, full of promises neither of them could voice yet. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. I won't sacrifice myself, he said quietly, because I'm starting to love you too, and I refuse to leave you alone in a world that's tried to destroy you at every turn. We face everything together from now on. Agreed? Agreed, Indira whispered. They held each other as night deepened, as the fortress settled into watchful readiness, as tomorrow's confrontation loomed like a storm on the horizon. But in that moment, wrapped in each other's arms with the mate bond singing between them, they found peace. Whatever came next, they would face it together, united by fate, strengthened by growing love, prepared to fight for their impossible future. The cold stone floor of the prison cell pressed against Indira's cheek, pulling her from unconsciousness. Her head throbbed where Ravenna's guards had struck her during the ambush. She tried to move, but chains binding her wrist to the wall rattled mockingly in the darkness. How long had she been here? Hours? Days? The narrow window high in the cell showed only gray sky, offering no answers. She shifted carefully, one hand moving to her stomach. The baby. Relief flooded through her when she felt the gentle flutter of life. Still there, still safe. For now. The council's neutral grounds had been a trap from the beginning. She should have known better than to trust anyone after what her own pack had done to her. But she'd wanted to protect Steele, wanted to spare him the war that her presence would bring. Instead, she'd walked directly into the council's hands, and Ravenna, Steele's own sister, had orchestrated it all. The memory of Ravenna's cold smile as the guards seized her replayed in Indira's mind. You're a liability to my brother's reign, she'd said. Better you disappear before you destroy everything our family has built. Pain lanced through Indira's chest, and she realized with a start that it wasn't entirely her own. Through the mate bond, she felt Steele's anguish, his rage and fear when he'd discovered her gone. The connection pulsed between them even across the distance, a thread of silver light in the darkness of her cell. I'm alive, she thought desperately, hoping somehow he could feel it. I'm fighting. Don't give up on me. The door to her cell crashed open. 2 council guards entered, dragging chains behind them. Elder Cyrus followed, his gray hair and cold eyes unchanged since their last meeting. Miss Thorne, he said with false courtesy, I trust your accommodations are adequate. What do you want? Indira's voice came out stronger than she felt. If you're going to kill me, stop pretending this is anything other than murder. Murder? Cyrus's eyebrows rose. No, my dear. We're simply protecting werewolf society from a dangerous anomaly. Your child, conceived through methods that defy natural law, threatens to upset the delicate balance of power that has maintained order for centuries. My child is innocent, Indira said fiercely. Your child is a weapon, Cyrus corrected, one we cannot allow to exist. Tomorrow at dawn, we'll humanely end your pregnancy and ensure the prophecy dies with it. Horror flooded through her. Steele will come for me. He'll destroy all of you. Steele is bound by the ancient laws he invoked. He cannot leave his territory until our judgment is rendered. Cyrus smiled coldly. By the time the magical binding releases him, it will be too late. The abomination will be removed from your womb, and you'll be free to return to whatever life a wolfless woman can manage." He left, the guards following, plunging her back into darkness. Indira pulled against the chains until her wrists bled, but the bonds held firm. Despair threatened to overwhelm her, but then she felt it again. Steele's presence through the bond, fierce and unwavering. He was fighting something. She could feel his determination, his absolute refusal to accept the magical binding that held him. Through their connection, she sensed his power building, pushing against constraints that should have been unbreakable. And then, like a dam bursting, she felt the binding shatter. Steele's rage across the bond was so powerful it made her gasp. He was free. He was coming for her. "Hold on," she thought, gripping that silver thread connecting them. "I'm holding on." Steele stood in his war room, surrounded by the 20 allied alphas who'd answered his call. Maps covered the table showing the Council's stronghold, its defenses, its weaknesses. But his mind was elsewhere, focused on the mate bond stretching toward the horizon, toward Indira imprisoned and afraid. "The magical binding shouldn't have broken," Alpha Kiran said, voicing what they were all thinking. "Ancient law has held for millennia. How did you—" "The bond," Beta Marcus interrupted, his expression awed. "The mate bond between them is stronger than ancient law, stronger than anything we've seen before." Steele's hands clenched on the table edge, wood splintering beneath his grip. Through the bond, he felt Indira's fear, her determination, her desperate hope that he would reach her in time. He felt her love, still new, still fragile, but growing stronger with each passing moment. "We march now," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Every warrior, every resource. The Council wanted war. They're about to get it. The Council's champions will challenge you before you reach Indira," Marcus warned. "It's their right under pack law. You'll have to fight through them." "Then I'll fight." Steele's silver eyes blazed. "I'll tear through every obstacle between me and my mate. And anyone who stands in my way will learn exactly why I'm called the most ruthless Alpha King in the realm." The allied alphas rose as one, pledging their warriors to his cause. Within the hour, Steele's forces assembled, hundreds of wolves ready to march on the Council's stronghold. Steele shifted into his massive black wolf, larger than any natural beast, his silver eyes glowing with barely contained fury. They moved through the night, a tide of fangs and claws that made the earth tremble. Through the bond, Steele felt Indira's awareness of his approach. He felt her hope surge, felt her whispering encouragement despite her own terror. "I'm coming," he sent down the bond with every ounce of will he possessed. "Hold on, my mate. I'm coming." Dawn broke as they reached the Council's stronghold. The massive fortress rose from granite cliffs, its walls lined with warriors prepared to defend it. But Steele didn't slow, didn't hesitate. He shifted back to human form at the gates, standing naked and unashamed before the assembled council guards. "I invoke the oldest law," his voice rang out, carrying across the courtyard, "the right of a mate to trial by combat for his bonded one. Send forth your champions, or release Indira Thorne immediately." The gates opened, and 3 wolves emerged, each one massive, each one scarred from countless battles, each one a council champion bred specifically for combat. They circled Steele with predatory grace, their intent clear. They meant to kill him. Behind Steele, Marcus and the allied alphas held position, respecting the ancient ritual even as they prepared to intervene if the council broke their own laws. Steele felt their support, felt their belief in his strength. But more than that, he felt Indira. Through the bond, her belief in him flowed like liquid fire through his veins. Her trust, her love, her absolute certainty that he would prevail augmented his power in ways he'd never experienced. The mate bond didn't just connect them, it strengthened them, made them greater together than either could be alone. The first champion lunged. Steele met him midair, his shift instantaneous, his black wolf colliding with the champion's gray with bone-crushing force. They rolled across the courtyard in a tangle of fangs and claws, but Steel was faster, stronger. He tore out the champion's throat in 3 efficient moves. The second and third attacked together, coordinating their strikes with practiced precision. Steel's wolf moved like shadow-made flesh, evading strikes that should have landed, countering with devastating accuracy. Through the bond, he felt Indira's presence like a second heartbeat, her strength flowing into him when his own threatened to falter. The battle was brutal, savage, exactly what the council had intended, but they'd miscalculated. They hadn't understood that Steel wasn't fighting alone, that every blow he struck carried Indira's desperate hope, that every wound he received made their bond burn brighter. When the third champion fell, Steel stood among the bodies, his black wolf painted crimson, his silver eyes blazing with triumph and rage. He shifted back to human form, addressing the council members watching from the fortress walls. "Your champions are dead. By ancient law, you will release Indira Thorn and render judgment in my favor, or face the consequences of breaking the oldest traditions of our kind." Elder Cyrus appeared on the wall, his expression twisted with barely concealed fury. "Very well, Alpha King. You've proven your strength. But before we release the girl, perhaps you'd care for refreshment? Surely even you need rest after such a battle." A servant emerged from the gates carrying a goblet. Something in Steele's gut twisted with warning, but protocol demanded he accept the offering. He reached for the cup. "No!" The scream came through the bond so powerfully it made him stumble. Indira's terror, her absolute certainty that danger waited in that simple gesture. Steele's hand froze inches from the goblet, and in that moment, everything changed. In her cell, Indira felt Steele's battle through the bond with an intensity that made her vision blur. Each strike he landed, each wound he received resonated through her body as though she fought beside him. His strength flowed into her, and hers into him, until she couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. For the first time in her life, someone fought for her, protected her, valued her enough to risk everything. The realization hit her like lightning. She wasn't worthless. She'd never been worthless. The pack that rejected her, the society that dismissed her, they'd been wrong. She was worthy of love, of protection, of belonging. Steele saw it, believed it, and through his eyes, she finally saw it in herself. Something stirred deep inside her. Not the baby, something else, something that had always been there but dormant, waiting. A presence that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, with the mate bond, with the love growing between her and Steele. "A wolf." "No," she whispered, but the presence only grew stronger. "That's impossible. I don't have—" Pain exploded through her body, cutting off her words. Not the pain of injury, but transformation, bones shifting, muscles reforming, her entire being remaking itself. She screamed, pulling against the chains with strength she shouldn't possess. The chains shattered. Indira collapsed to the cell floor, her vision swimming. Through the bond, she felt Steele's shock, his sudden desperate hope. He'd felt it too, the awakening of something that should have existed from birth but had been waiting for the mate bond powerful enough to call it forth. Her skin rippled. Silver fur erupted along her arms, spreading across her body like moonlight made solid. Her bones cracked and reformed with agonizing precision. The wolf inside her surged forward, and Indira stopped fighting it, stopped questioning the impossible, and simply surrendered to what she'd always been meant to be. The transformation was transcendent and terrible, beautiful and brutal. When it finally completed, Indira stood on 4 paws in the center of her cell, seeing the world through wolf eyes for the first time. Her fur gleamed silver white, catching the dim light like starshine. The color of ancient royalty, of bloodlines thought extinct for centuries. She was magnificent, powerful, everything she'd been told she could never be. And through the bond, she felt Steele's awe, his pride, his fierce love blazing brighter than any sun. Come to me. His thought reached her clearly now that she had her wolf. I need you. Indira didn't hesitate. She threw herself at the cell door, her newfound strength shattering wood that should have held. Guards in the corridor shouted in alarm, but she was past them before they could react, moving with speed and grace that felt both foreign and perfectly natural. She tore through the stronghold's corridors, following the bond that led her unerringly toward steel. Guards tried to stop her, but she was too fast, too determined. Nothing would keep her from her mate. She burst into the courtyard just as Steele reached for the offered goblet. Through the bond, she felt the poison waiting in the cup, felt the council's treachery. Without thought, acting on pure instinct, she leaped. Her silver wolf collided with the servant, knocking the goblet from his hands. The cup shattered on the stone, its contents hissing and smoking where they splashed. Poison meant to kill even an alpha king. Silence descended over the courtyard. Every eye fixed on Indira's silver form as she positioned herself between steel and the council's treachery. Her lips pulled back in a snarl that promised violence to anyone who threatened her mate. Impossible, Elder Cyrus breathed from the walls. The silver bloodline died out 3 centuries ago. Steele's hand came down on her head, his touch gentle despite the battle fury still coursing through him. Not impossible, he said, his voice carrying across the courtyard with absolute authority. Prophesied. My mate was never wolfless. Her wolf waited for the bond strong enough to awaken it. And now she stands before you exactly as the ancient texts foretold. The Silver Queen beside the Alpha King, united to bridge all werewolf society. Indira shifted back to human form, her transformation smooth now that her wolf had awakened. She stood naked beside Steel, her silver hair falling around her shoulders, changed like her wolf, marking her royal bloodline. Steel immediately shed his cloak, wrapping it around her with possessive tenderness. The prophecy, Marcus breathed from behind them. It's all true. The council members stared down from the walls, their expressions ranging from awe to terror. The balance of power they'd fought so hard to maintain crumbled before their eyes, replaced by something older, stronger, destined. Elder Cyrus recovered first, his face hardening. Seize them both! The prophecy cannot— The prophecy is already fulfilled, a voice interrupted. Alpha Kieran stepped forward, flanked by the other allied alphas. You see before you the Alpha King and his Silver Queen, exactly as the ancient texts described. To move against them now is to move against fate itself. Against all of us, another Alpha added. 20 powerful voices spoke as one, unified in their support. But not everyone accepted the new order. From the fortress emerged warriors loyal to the council's old guard, weapons drawn, eyes blazing with desperate determination to prevent change. And at their head, his face twisted with rage and fear, stood Alpha Thorn. Abomination! He roared, pointing at Indira. She's corrupted Steel with her dark magic, perverted the prophecy for her own gain. Kill them both before they destroy everything. Steel's growl shook the very stones of the courtyard. You tried to murder my mate and child in their own territory. You hired assassins to cut an innocent from her womb. And now you dare speak of corruption? The battlefield erupted. Warriors clashed in the courtyard, the council's forces against those who supported Steel and Indira. But something extraordinary happened as the battle raged. Indira felt power surge through the mate bond, felt it amplify and transform. Where she and Steel stood together, a shield formed, not physical, but spiritual. Warriors fighting for their cause found themselves protected, wounds healing faster, strength amplified. But those attacking with murderous intent, with corrupted ambition poisoning their hearts, found their own darkness turned against them. The harder they fought, the more their own evil consumed them from within. What's happening? Indira gasped, feeling the power flowing through her and Steel, radiating outward. The prophecy isn't just about our child, Steel realized, his silver eyes wide with understanding. It's about us. Together we bridge not just bloodlines, but the divide between light and darkness. We protect those who fight for justice and truth. Indira understood then. The prophecy child would unite all packs, but she and steel were the foundation, proof that impossible bonds could form, that strength came in unexpected forms, that love and justice could triumph over fear and corruption. Alpha Thorn charged through the chaos, his massive brown wolf targeting Indira with single-minded determination. "You should have died in Silver Creek," he snarled. "Should have accepted your place as worthless and less than." But Indira was no longer the frightened girl who'd fled his pack. Her silver wolf met his charge head-on, powered by the mate bond, by her newfound strength, by the absolute refusal to let anyone harm her family ever again. They collided in a fury of fangs and claws. Thorn was larger, more experienced, but Indira fought with the desperation of a mother protecting her unborn child, of a mate defending her bond. And through it all, Steel's presence in her mind gave her strength, guided her instincts, made her greater than she'd ever been alone. Thorn lunged for her throat. Indira twisted, his fangs catching only air. In that moment of his overextension, his corrupted ambition, his murderous intent toward an innocent, the prophecy's power activated. His own darkness consumed him, his heart giving out under the weight of his evil. He fell at her paws, dead by his own corruption. Silence spread across the battlefield as warriors on both sides witnessed what had occurred. The council's remaining forces, seeing their leader dead and the prophecy manifesting before their eyes, lowered their weapons. Elder Cyrus descended from the wall, his face ashen. Beside him came other council members, their expressions ranging from acceptance to grudging defeat. They approached where Steel and Indira stood together, silver and shadow united. "The prophecy is fulfilled," Cyrus said, the words seeming torn from his throat. "We acknowledge Steel as Alpha King and Indira as Silver Queen. The old order ends here." One by one, the council members knelt. First those who'd secretly supported change, then the reluctant ones, until finally even the most resistant bent their knees before the power of destiny manifested. But more than submission, Indira felt something shift in the very fabric of werewolf society. Pack bonds strengthened across the realm. Warriors who'd fought felt their honor restored. And somewhere deep in her womb, she felt her child stir, recognized, protected, destined to lead their kind into a new era. Steel's hand found hers, their fingers interlacing. Through the bond, she felt his emotions mirroring hers. Triumph, relief, hope for their future. They'd faced impossible odds and emerged victorious, not through violence alone, but through the strength of their bond and the justice of their cause. "It's over," Steel murmured against her hair. "You're safe now. Our child is safe." Indira leaned into his embrace, feeling the silver fire of the mate bond pulse between them, feeling her wolf finally at peace within her, feeling the future unfold with infinite possibility. "No," she said softly. "It's not over. It's just beginning." And as the sun climbed higher over the council grounds, painting everything in shades of gold and promise, Steel and Indira stood together, Alpha King and Silver Queen, darkness and light, strength and courage united. They'd fulfilled the prophecy, but more importantly, they'd proven that love could transcend any obstacle, that bonds forged in adversity were unbreakable, and that the future belonged to those brave enough to fight for it. Together, they would build something new, something better. A world where wolfless girls weren't dismissed as broken, where prophecies brought unity instead of fear, where love was stronger than ancient law. Their story was just beginning,